as adults, I think we get so caught up in the task at hand, we forget to listen. And especially, I think for some reason, we don't think this is important to listen to little people in our lives, kids, as it is adults. And Chuck, he had a quote, and I looked it up because he wasn't sure
Oh,
who
Chuck
said
Mingo?
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Chuck Mingo. And it's by David Augsburger, is a quote. And it's being listened to is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference. So if we want a kid to feel loved, it's listening to them. And also, listening can bring healing. Beth Guckenberger talked about, for kids who've experienced trauma, their brain undergoes some changes, but neuroplasticity is the science that shows that the brain can change. And she said two of the fastest ways to help the brain change is through listening and play. A lot of people go, oh, I don't know what to do with this kid. He's had this hard background and all that. She's going, it's not that hard. Listen and play. And I think that's another thing. We complicate it too much. And when Beth said listen and play, I mean, anybody can listen and play. And if you don't know how to play, then just sit down on the floor and do what the kid's doing, or pick up a ping pong paddle and play with a teenager in your life. And also, as far as not complicating it, I think Lara Roberts of Raising Autistic Disciples, and she has one of her middle son is autistic. And she talks about, some people think because kids aren't verbal or, they operate in different ways that they can't understand the gospel. And I loved how she talked about God's not going to create somebody who can't know him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to know him. And then she simplified it in proclaim and saturate. Say it over and over again. Communicate the gospel to them over and over again. Say it and then say it over and over again. And then it's the job of the Holy Spirit to convict, which I thought was very freeing for a lot of parents who, they want their kid to know Jesus. And so they just need to talk about it some more.
Yeah. And a lot of these parents are dealing with a lot of things on their own.
Yeah,
or
they are.
It's a new thing. So being able to be connected to other people to help them navigate it, or just to empathize with the situation. You combine those themes, and it's the adult's responsibility. They need to be patient, keep trying, and slow down. Not necessarily in that order.
Right. And then you were talking about the parents, and just the importance of community. And we talked to quite a few parents who have kids who've experienced trauma, or they're disabled or neurodivergent. And every single one of them, everyone had a story of feeling isolated, but then breaking through and gaining community. But it seems like when they get that first diagnosis, and this is something I think for all of us to learn from, if somebody gets a diagnosis and you haven't walked the walk with them before, then they don't need advice for you or ideas of medications, or, they need casseroles. They need you to mow the lawn. They need you to take maybe the other kids to sporting events. But every single one of the parents had to be brave and eventually step out and share with somebody what was going on. And the best analogy I thought was Carrie Baker, a good friend of mine who has Brady I think he's in middle school, who is autistic. And she said when they first got the diagnosis, they didn't even speak the word autistic in their home for years. And she said we were swimming in a private pool. We didn't want anybody else in knowing what was going on. And then once she started communicating, then she built this wonderful supportive community around her. And also her son Brady started communicating too. I remember she told a story about him telling kids he was autistic and coming home and telling her. And she was like a little like, oh, because she's wondering if that was the right thing to do. And then he said there were another kid that said, oh, I'm autistic too. And that kid had never shared it. So when we share what's going on, it gives other people the opportunity to be vulnerable and open up.